The pregnancy test had 2 lines. Kang Hae-il stared at it, his hands shaking, trying to understand what it meant. His wife was gone, her closet half empty, her phone dead. Not a single clue about where she'd disappeared to on their wedding anniversary. And now this. Proof that Lillian had been carrying his child when she'd packed her bag and walked out of their marriage. He'd thought he knew her, thought their life together was fine, normal, happy enough. But women didn't just vanish when they found out they were pregnant. Not unless something was very, very wrong. The test felt fragile in his palm, like it might break. Just like everything else in his life had broken, the moment he realized his wife would rather raise their baby alone than stay with him one more day. Before you find out what happens next, do me a favor. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think Lillian is hiding. I read every single one. Now let's get back to the story. The hotel suite was perfect. Candles lined the table by the window. Champagne sat cooling in ice. And Kang Hae-il checked his watch for the 20th time. 7:45. Lillian should have arrived 15 minutes ago. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Her voice, warm and familiar, asked him to leave a message. He didn't. Instead, he sent a text. "I'm waiting for you. Can't wait to see your face." The message delivered, but didn't show as read. Hae-il frowned, loosening his tie. Maybe she was stuck in traffic. Maybe she'd stopped to pick up something and lost track of time. Lillian did that sometimes, got absorbed in looking at old buildings or interesting architecture, and forgot the world existed. He waited another 20 minutes, then 30. By 8:30, the knot in his stomach had grown into something cold and sharp. He called her office. No answer. He called her friend, Jennifer. Voicemail. He tried her number again, and this time it went straight to a dead tone. Her phone was off. Afro left the hotel. The drive home took 12 minutes, but it felt like an hour. Their apartment building rose into the Seoul night sky, all glass and modern lines. He'd bought it because Lillian loved the view of the old temple across the street. She said it reminded her that new and old could exist together. The apartment door was locked. He opened it and stepped inside. Everything looked normal. Her shoes were missing from the rack, the ones she wore most days. The living room was clean, no signs of struggle or hurry. The kitchen counter held a single coffee mug, washed and turned upside down to dry. "Lillian?" His voice echoed back at him. Hae-il walked down the hallway to their bedroom. The bed was made. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand next to a book she'd been working through for weeks. He opened the closet. Her favorite coat was gone. So was her brown leather bag, the one she'd carried since before they met. He checked the bathroom. Her toothbrush was missing. So was her face cream, the expensive one she used every night. Hae-il stood in the bathroom doorway, his mind trying to catch up with what his eyes were telling him. She'd left, packed her things, and left. But why? They'd had dinner together last night. She'd seemed quiet, but not upset, not angry. She'd kissed him goodnight before he'd fallen asleep. Everything had been normal. Hae-il pulled his phone out and dialed his head of security. The man answered on the first ring. "Did anyone come to the apartment today?" "No, sir. Mrs. Kang left at 9 this morning with a suitcase. She took a taxi." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "She's left with luggage before, sir. I assumed it was for work." Hae-il ended the call. His wife had walked out of their home 7 hours ago, and he hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. What kind of husband was he? He went back to the bedroom and started searching. The dresser first. Her everyday clothes were mostly there, but some were missing. Underwear, socks, a few shirts. In the back of her drawer, his fingers touched something that crinkled. An envelope. He pulled it out. It was addressed to him in her handwriting, but it wasn't sealed. Inside was a blank card, as if she'd meant to write something but changed her mind. The closet next. He pushed aside hanging dresses and coats, looking for something, anything that would explain this. On the top shelf, he found a gap where her small travel bag usually sat. It was gone. Hae-il sat on the edge of the bed, trying to think. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of coming home to her smile, her terrible singing in the shower, her habit of leaving books in every room. 3 years, and she'd vanished on their anniversary without a word. His phone buzzed. For a second, hope flared in his chest, but it was just his grandmother's assistant, confirming tomorrow's family dinner. He ignored it. Think. Where would she go? Her job. She loved her job. He'd call her boss first thing in the morning. No, he'd go there now. Someone had to know something. But first, he needed her passport. If she'd left the country, he had to know. They kept important documents in the drawer of her nightstand. Hae-il pulled it open. Passport. Still there. Birth certificate. Marriage license. The paper now soft at the creases from how many times she'd unfolded it to look at. She'd told him once that she still couldn't believe they were married, that it felt like a dream. He pushed the documents aside, searching deeper. His hand closed around something plastic. He pulled it out. The world stopped. It was a pregnancy test. The small window showed 2 clear lines. Positive. Hae-il stared at it, his brain refusing to process what he was seeing. Lillian was pregnant. His wife was carrying their child. And she'd left. His hand started shaking. When had she taken this? The test looked recent, not old. He checked the nightstand drawer again and found the box it came in, pushed to the very back. The receipt was still inside, dated 1 week ago. She'd known for a week. 7 days. And she hadn't told him. 7 days ago, he'd been in Busan handling a problem with one of the shipping companies. He'd come home late, exhausted. She'd already been asleep. Or pretending to be. The next morning, he'd left early for a meeting. Had she tried to tell him? Had he been too busy to notice? The pregnancy test felt fragile in his hand, like it might break. A baby. They were going to have a baby. Or they had been. Before she'd packed a bag and disappeared. Why would she leave? Women didn't just abandon their husbands when they found out they were pregnant, unless something was very, very wrong. Had someone threatened her? Had someone from his world, from the dangerous parts of his life that he'd worked so hard to keep away from her, had someone found out and scared her? The thought made his blood run cold. Or worse, did she leave because of the baby? Because she didn't want it? Because she didn't want to raise a child with him? No, that didn't make sense. Lillian had talked about having children, not often and always carefully, as if she was afraid to want it too much. But she'd mentioned it. Names she liked. Whether they'd raised the child bilingual. Small comments that had made him smile. So what had changed? Hae-il set the test down carefully on the nightstand and started searching again. This time, he wasn't looking for where she'd gone. He was looking for why. Her desk in the corner of the bedroom was neat as always. Pencils in a cup, her laptop closed, a stack of architecture magazines. He opened the laptop, but it was password protected. He knew her passwords, had seen her type them enough times. Her mother's maiden name plus their wedding date. But when he entered it, the computer refused. She'd changed it. The drawers held nothing useful. Work documents, old project files, printed photos she'd been meaning to put in albums. He was about to close the bottom drawer when he noticed it didn't shut quite right. He pulled it all the way out and reached into the back. His fingers found a shoebox. He pulled it into the light. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to him, all in her handwriting, all unopened, unsent. He picked up the first one. The envelope was dated 2 years ago, just a few months after their wedding. With shaking hands, he opened it. "Dear Hae-il, I know you're busy. I know your work is important. But sometimes I feel like I'm living alone. You come home so late and you're so tired. I try to talk to you, but you're somewhere else in your mind. I miss you, even when you're right next to me. I don't know how to tell you this in person without sounding like I'm complaining. You do so much for me. You gave me this beautiful home. You're always kind. But I'm lonely. Is that selfish? I feel selfish writing this. I love you. I just wish I knew if you still loved me too. I'm not sending this. I'll probably never send it. But I needed to say it somewhere. Love, Lillian." Hae-il's chest hurt. He picked up another letter, this one from a year ago. "Dear Hae-il, your grandmother invited me to lunch today. She was polite, but I could feel her disappointment. I'm not Korean. I'll never be Korean. My children won't be fully Korean. I see it in the way she looks at me, like I'm a mistake you made that she has to tolerate. You don't see it because she's different when you're around. Or maybe you do see it, and you're just used to it. I don't know which is worse. I'm trying so hard to fit into your world, but I don't think I ever will. Love, Lillian." He read another. And another. Each one was a small crack in the image he'd had of their marriage. Each one showed him a woman who was slowly breaking, who was trying to be strong, who felt alone in a marriage that he'd thought was fine. How had he missed this? How had he been so blind? The most recent letter was dated 2 weeks ago. "Dear Hae-il, I'm pregnant. I took the test 3 times to be sure. I'm terrified and excited, and I don't know how to feel. I want to tell you, but you've been gone so much lately. And when you're home, you seem so stressed. Is this the right time? Will there ever be a right time? I'm going to wait until our anniversary. I'll tell you then. I'll make it special. Maybe this baby will be the thing that brings us back together. Maybe this will fix everything that's broken between us. I hope so. I really, really hope so. Love, Lillian." She'd planned to tell him on their anniversary. Tonight. At the hotel where he'd been waiting like a fool while she was gone. Something had happened between 2 weeks ago and today. Something that changed her mind. Something that made her pack a bag and run instead of telling him about their child. Hae-il put the letters back in the box with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He needed to find her, needed to understand what had gone wrong. But it was past 10 at night, and he had no idea where to even start looking. He called his security team. Within 20 minutes, 4 men were in his living room. "Find my wife," he told them. "Check her bank accounts, her credit cards, her phone records. Find out where she went." They nodded and got to work. While they made calls and typed on laptops, Hae-il went back to searching the apartment. There had to be something else, some clue he was missing. In the kitchen, he found her calendar hanging on the inside of the pantry door. She'd always kept a paper calendar, said it helped her think. The month was full of her neat handwriting, work meetings, lunch with friends, dentist appointments. And there, on today's date, she'd written anniversary with a little heart next to it. But underneath, scratched out so hard the pen had torn the paper, were the words, "Tell him." She'd planned to tell him about the baby today. And then she'd changed her mind so violently that she'd destroyed the paper. What happened? What changed? Hae-il flipped back through the previous weeks. Most days were routine. But 1 week ago, on the same day she'd bought the pregnancy test, she'd written family house 2 p.m., his grandmother's estate. She'd gone to the family house. He pulled out his phone and called his grandmother. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice sharp with irritation at being called so late. "Hae-il, this better be important. Was Lillian at the house last week? A week ago today?" Silence. Then, "Yes. She came by in the afternoon. Said she wanted to see the gardens. Why? Did you talk to her? Briefly. I was hosting a meeting with the family council. She didn't stay long. Who was at this meeting? The usual people. Your uncles. Some of the senior advisors. Hale, what's going on? He ignored the question. What did you discuss? Business matters. Nothing that concerns you anymore. You've made it clear you want distance from family operations. Her tone was cold. She'd never forgiven him for stepping back from the family's less legal enterprises. What kind of business matters? Succession planning, estate management. Why are you interrogating me about a meeting from a week ago? Succession planning, estate management. And Lillian had been there, pregnant with the next generation of the family. Had she overheard something? Had someone said something to her? Did anyone speak to Lillian that day? I don't know. I was busy. She wandered around the house and left. Hey, you're starting to worry me. Where is Lillian? I don't know, he admitted. She's gone. His grandmother sucked in a sharp breath. Gone where? If I knew that, I wouldn't be calling you in the middle of the night. He hung up before she could respond. One of his security men looked up from his laptop. Sir, her bank account hasn't been touched. No credit card activity since yesterday when she bought groceries. Her phone's last location was here, at the apartment, at 8:43 this morning. Then it went dark. So she'd turned off her phone right before she left. Deliberate. Planned. Check taxi companies. She took a taxi from here at 9 a.m. Find out where she went. The man nodded and made another call. High-Ill paced the living room, his mind racing. Lillian was out there somewhere, alone, pregnant, scared enough to run from him. Every minute that passed was another minute she was gone. Another minute, something could go wrong. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Hello? Mr. Kang. This is Lee Minseo. I work with your wife at the Conservation Institute. Is she with you? Is she okay? I don't know where she is. But I'm calling because something strange happened. Lillian resigned last week. She came in, packed up her desk, and quit. She didn't give a reason. We tried to convince her to stay, but she seemed determined. I thought you should know, since you're her emergency contact. Resigned. She'd quit her job. The job she loved. The work that made her eyes light up when she talked about it. She'd walked away from it. Did she say anything? Anything about where she was going or why? No. She just said she couldn't work here anymore. She seemed sad. Really sad. I asked if everything was okay, and she said it would be. Then she left. Hale thanked the woman and ended the call. Lillian had been planning this for at least a week. This wasn't a sudden decision. She'd known she was pregnant, gone to his grandmother's house, overheard something at that meeting, and then systematically started erasing herself from her life. From their life. One of the security men held up his phone. Found the taxi. It took her to a real estate office in Mapo district. After that, the trail goes cold. A real estate office. She'd rented a place. Somewhere he didn't know about. Somewhere she could hide. Get me the address of that office. First thing tomorrow morning. I'm going there. But tomorrow felt like a lifetime away. Hale dismissed his security team and stood alone in the apartment that suddenly felt too big, too empty. He walked back to the bedroom and picked up the pregnancy test again. 2 lines. A baby. His baby. He'd failed his wife so completely that she'd rather disappear than tell him she was carrying their child. That was the truth of it. Whatever she'd heard, whatever she'd feared, it had been easier for her to believe than to trust him. And that was his fault. For 3 years, he'd kept parts of his life hidden from her, not because he didn't trust her, but because he'd wanted to protect her. His family's business had shadows in it, dark corners that involved dangerous people and dangerous choices. He'd stepped back from most of it, focused on the legitimate companies, tried to clean up the Kong family name. But some connections couldn't be cut completely, so he'd kept her separate, kept her in the light while he dealt with the darkness. And in doing so, he'd created distance, made her feel like an outsider, made it possible for her to believe whatever she'd believed that made her run. He should have been honest, should have trusted her with the truth, even the ugly parts, because now she was gone, and he had no idea how to find her. Hail's phone buzzed, a text from his grandmother. "We need to talk, tomorrow. This is serious." He didn't reply. Instead, he lay down on their bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in Seoul, Lillian was doing the same thing. Maybe she was crying. Maybe she was relieved to be away from him. Maybe she was scared. He hoped she wasn't scared. Whatever else happened, he didn't want her to be afraid. The night stretched on, long and sleepless, and in the morning, he would start searching. He would find her. He would fix this. He had to. Because the alternative, a life without Lillian, without their child, was not something he could survive. The sun rose over Seoul at 6:23. Hail watched it happen from the bedroom window, the same window where Lillian used to sit and sketch the temple across the street. He hadn't slept, hadn't changed clothes, had just spent the night thinking about every conversation they'd ever had, looking for clues he'd missed. At 7, he called the real estate office. They didn't open until 9. He called his grandmother back. "Tell me everything about that meeting, every word." His grandmother sighed. "You're being dramatic. My wife is missing and she's pregnant. I'm being exactly as dramatic as the situation requires." Another pause. Then, "Pregnant?" "Yes." "And she didn't tell you?" "No." "Now tell me about the meeting." His grandmother's voice changed, became sharper, more focused. "We were discussing the inheritance structure. With you stepping back from family operations, we needed to clarify the line of succession. There was talk about the next generation, about ensuring the family's legacy continues properly. Your uncle Jin-woo was concerned about bloodline purity, maintaining tradition. You know how he is." Bloodline purity. Hail closed his eyes. "What exactly did he say?" "Nothing specific. Just his usual nonsense about keeping the family Korean, maintaining our heritage." I shut him down quickly. "But Hail, if Lillian overheard that, if she thought we were talking about her child..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Lillian had heard them discussing the next generation, heard someone talking about bloodline and purity, and she jumped to the worst possible conclusion, that they'd try to take the baby from her, that being a foreigner would make her unfit in their eyes. And he'd given her no reason to think otherwise. He'd never stood up to his family in front of her. Never made it clear that she came first. He'd always tried to keep the peace, to balance his family and his marriage, and in doing so, he'd protected neither. "I need to find her," he said quietly. "I'll help," his grandmother replied. "Whatever you need." That surprised him. His grandmother had never approved of his marriage to Lillian, had been cold at the wedding, distant at family gatherings. But now her voice held something he'd never heard before when talking about his wife. Regret. "Why?" he asked. "Because I was wrong about her. And if she's carrying my great-grandchild, if she's so scared that she ran, then I owe her an apology. We all do." Hail ended the call and got ready. The real estate office opened in an hour. He'd be there waiting. The office was small, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Hail arrived at 8:45 and waited in his car until he saw the lights come on inside. Then he walked in. The woman at the desk looked up and her eyes widened slightly. People usually had that reaction when they saw him. Something about his face, or maybe just the way he carried himself, made people nervous. I need information about a rental. My wife came here last week. Sir, I can't give out client information. Il pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of Lillian. Her name is Lillian Kang. She's pregnant and missing. I need to know where she went. The woman's expression softened. I remember her. Sweet lady. But I really can't. Please. The word came out rougher than he intended. She's in trouble. I just need to make sure she's safe. The woman looked at him for a long moment, then at the photo, then back at him. Finally, she turned to her computer. She rented a small apartment in Seodamun district. 1 month lease, paid in cash. But Mr. Kang, that was a week ago. There's no guarantee she's still there. She wrote down the address and handed it to him. Il took it, thanked her, and was out the door before she could change her mind. The apartment building was old, the kind that had probably been there for 30 years. Nothing like the modern place they'd shared. He took the stairs to the 3rd floor and found the unit number. Knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Lillian, it's me. Please, I just want to talk. Silence. He tried the handle. Locked. For a moment, he considered breaking it down. But if she was inside, that would only scare her more. Instead, he sat down with his back against her door and waited. An hour passed, then 2. Neighbors came and went, giving him strange looks. He didn't move. Finally, an elderly woman stopped in front of him. Are you looking for the foreign lady? Il stood up. Yes. Do you know where she is? She left 2 days ago. Packed up and went. Didn't say where. Gone. She'd been here, and now she was gone again. Il felt something crack inside his chest. Did she seem okay? The woman shrugged. Seemed sad. Quiet. Is she in trouble? No, Il said. I am. He left the building and sat in his car, staring at nothing. She was running, actually running from him, and he had no idea where to look next. His phone rang, one of his security team. Sir, we found something. Mrs. Kang has been using a friend's name, Jennifer Han, to rent places. We tracked down another apartment, this one in Jongno district, rented 3 days ago. Hope sparked again. Send me the address. 20 minutes later, he was there. Another building. This one newer. He climbed to the 5th floor and knocked on the door. Nothing. But this time, when he pressed his ear to the door, he heard movement inside. She was there. Lillian, I know you're in there. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. More silence. Then, so quietly, he almost missed it. Her voice. Go away, Il. His heart jumped at hearing her voice, even muffled through the door. I can't do that. Please. She sounded tired. So tired? He pressed his hand against the door, wishing he could touch her instead of this barrier between them. I found the test, he said. I know about the baby. A sound like a sob came from the other side. That's why you need to leave. Why? Lillian, why would finding out you're pregnant make me leave? I want this. I want you. I want our family. They won't let you keep both. Her words were so soft he barely heard them, but they hit him like a punch. Who won't? Your family. I heard them. They were talking about the baby, about keeping bloodlines pure, about making arrangements. Il, they're going to take our child away from me. And there it was, the fear that had made her run, the misunderstanding that had broken everything. No, he said firmly. That's not what that conversation was about. Lillian, please open the door. Let me explain. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't risk it. This baby is all I have. You have me. You've always had me. I know I've been a terrible husband. I know I've made you feel alone. But I love you, and I love our baby. No one is taking anything from you. I swear on my life. The door lock clicked. Slowly, it opened. Lillian stood in the doorway, and Hai-il's breath caught. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She was wearing an old sweater he recognized, one of his that she'd claimed years ago. And even though she looked like she hadn't slept in days, even though she was looking at him like he might hurt her, she was still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You can't promise that," she whispered. "You're not the only one who decides. Yes, I am. My family doesn't control my life. They don't control yours. And they sure as hell don't control our child's." A tear slid down her cheek. "You don't understand what I heard. Then help me understand. Tell me everything. Please, Lillian. Let me in." She hesitated, her hand on the doorframe, caught between closing him out and letting him in. And for a moment, Hai-il thought she might slam the door in his face, but she didn't. Instead, she stepped back and let him inside. The apartment was tiny. One room with a kitchenette in the corner, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, a single window that looked out at another building. Nothing like their home. Nothing like the life he'd given her. And she'd chosen this over him. Hai-il stood in the doorway, suddenly unsure what to do with his hands. He'd imagined this moment 100 times in the past day. Finding her, holding her, telling her everything would be okay. But now that he was here, the distance between them felt like an ocean. Lillian moved to the small table and sat down. She didn't invite him to sit, just wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the floor. "I went to your grandmother's house to plan a surprise," she started, her voice flat. "For our anniversary. I thought maybe I could use the garden, have dinner there, tell you about the baby somewhere beautiful, somewhere that meant something to your family." Hai-il moved closer, but didn't sit. "What happened?" "Your grandmother was in a meeting. I heard voices coming from the study. I wasn't trying to listen. I was just walking past, looking for the housekeeper to ask about the garden. But then I heard my name." She looked up at him, and the pain in her eyes made him want to break something. "Your uncle, the one who never talks to me at family dinners, he was saying that the bloodline needed to stay pure, that the next generation had to be raised properly, with Korean values, Korean traditions. He said arrangements would need to be made to ensure the child understood their place in the family." "Lillian, I'm not finished." Her voice got stronger. "Then someone else, I don't know who, said that foreign influence could be damaging, that the child would need proper guidance from family elders. And your grandmother, she didn't disagree. She just said they'd discuss the details later, after the child was born." She stood up, her hands shaking. "I was pregnant for one day, Hai-il, one single day, and they were already planning to take my baby from me. That's not what they meant. Then what did they mean? Explain it to me. Make it make sense." Hai-il ran his hand through his hair, frustration and guilt mixing into something that felt like drowning. "They were talking about protection. My family has enemies, people who would use a child to get to us. The arrangements they mentioned were security measures, guards, safe houses, protocols. Not taking the baby from you. And the bloodline talk, the Korean values. My uncle is old and stupid. He says things like that because he's stuck in the past. But he has no power. He doesn't make decisions about my life or yours." Lillian laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "He has enough power that your grandmother sat there and listened. She didn't shut him down. She didn't say that I was the mother and I had rights. She just moved on like it was a normal thing to discuss. She regrets that now. Now? Now that I've run away? Now that it's a problem?" Lillian shook her head. "That doesn't help me, Hai-il. I can't trust people who only respect me when I cause trouble." She was right. He knew she was right. His grandmother had been cold to Lillian from the beginning, had made her feel unwelcome in subtle ways that he'd ignored because he didn't want to deal with the conflict. He'd chosen the easy path, and Lillian had paid for it. "You're right," he said quietly. "My family has treated you terribly. I've let them treat you terribly. I thought if I just kept the peace, eventually they'd come around. Eventually they'd see what I see when I look at you. But I was wrong." Lillian's eyes filled with tears. "What do you see when you look at me?" The question caught him off guard. "What?" "You said they'd see what you see. What is that? Because most days, I don't think you see me at all." The words hit harder than a fist. "That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me about my work, about my projects, about anything that matters to me?" Hail opened his mouth and then closed it. He couldn't remember the last real conversation they'd had about her life, her dreams, her fears. "I thought so," Lillian said softly. "You see a wife. Someone who's supposed to be there when you come home. Someone who looks good at family dinners. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions about where you go or what you do. But you don't see me." "I see you," he insisted, but even to his own ears it sounded weak. "What's my favorite color?" "Purple. It's blue, deep blue, like the sky right before sunset. I've told you that 3 times. She wiped her eyes. "What's the name of the project I was working on before I quit?" Silence. "It was the Hanak restoration in Bukchon. I'd been leading that project for 8 months. I talked about it every day for the first 2 months. You never asked to see it. Not once." Each fact was another nail in the coffin of his defense. He had no excuse, no justification. He'd been a ghost in his own marriage. "What's my mother's name?" Lillian continued. "What's my favorite food? What am I allergic to? What do I do when I can't sleep?" "Stop." "Why? Because it hurts?" "Good. It should hurt." Do you know what hurts more? Being married to someone who doesn't know you, who doesn't want to know you, who keeps you like a pretty thing in a nice apartment and thinks that's the same as love. "I do love you." His voice cracked on the words. "Maybe you do, but you don't like me. You don't find me interesting enough to pay attention to, and that's worse than not loving me at all." Hail felt something break inside him. She was right, about all of it. He'd been so focused on protecting her, on keeping the dark parts of his life away from her, that he'd kept all of himself away. He'd given her money and safety and a nice home, but he hadn't given her him. "Your mother's name is Thandiwe," he said suddenly. "She died when you were 16. You were allergic to shellfish. You broke out in hives. When you can't sleep, you make tea and sit by the window sketching buildings. Your favorite food is your grandmother's recipe for sadza, but you can never make it taste right because she died before she could teach you properly." Lillian stared at him. "Your favorite color is blue like sunset. You hate the smell of roses, but you love jasmine. You hum when you're concentrating. You read the ending of books first because you hate surprises. You wanted to be a painter when you were a child, but your father said it wasn't practical, so you became an architect instead. And you still feel guilty about that, like you let him down by choosing something that made you happy." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You take your coffee with too much sugar and no cream. You're afraid of dogs because one bit you when you were 7. You miss Zimbabwe every single day, but you'd never move back because you feel like you'd be admitting defeat. And when you smile, really smile, you get a dimple on your left cheek that you hate, but I think makes you look like sunlight." His own eyes were burning. "I see you, Lillian. I've always seen you. I just forgot to tell you. I forgot to show you. I forgot that seeing someone isn't enough if they don't know they're being seen." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Ha'il moved toward her, slowly, like she was something wild that might bolt. When she didn't back away, he pulled her into his arms. She fought it for a second, her hands pushing against his chest. But then she collapsed into him, crying so hard her whole body shook. "I was so scared," she whispered against his shirt. "I'm still so scared." "I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the tiny apartment, while the world outside kept moving. When Lillian finally pulled back, her eyes were swollen and her face was blotchy. She'd never looked more beautiful to him. "I can't go back to the way things were," she said. "I can't live in that apartment feeling alone. I can't go to family dinners where people look through me like I'm invisible. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I know. And I can't raise a baby in that environment. I won't. If your family can't accept me, can't respect me, then I need to leave. For real this time." The thought of losing her made him feel sick, but he nodded. "You're right." She looked surprised. "What?" "You're right. About everything. My family has been cruel. I've been absent. Our marriage has been broken for a long time, and I didn't want to see it. But I see it now. And if you'll let me, I want to fix it. How? I don't know yet. But I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Together." Lillian sat back down at the table, exhausted. "I don't know if I believe you." "That's fair. I don't know if I can trust you. I'll earn it back." She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd arrived. "Why now? Why do you suddenly care now?" "I've always cared. But you're right, I didn't show it. I thought providing for you was enough. I thought keeping you safe was enough. I thought as long as I wasn't hurting you, we were okay. But a marriage isn't just the absence of pain. It's supposed to be the presence of joy, connection, partnership. And I failed at all of that." He sat down across from her. "Finding that pregnancy test, it didn't change how I feel about you. It just made me realize I was about to lose everything that mattered. And I can't let that happen. I won't." Lillian touched her stomach, a gesture so small and protective it made his heart ache. "I'm about 12 weeks along. I have my next appointment in 4 days. Can I come?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Please, let me be there. Let me start being the husband you deserve, the father our child deserves. One appointment doesn't fix 3 years of loneliness. I know, but it's a start." Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at it and frowned. "It's Jennifer. I should take this. I've been avoiding her calls." Ha'il nodded and stood, giving her space. Lillian answered. "Hey." "Yes, I'm okay. No, I'm not in trouble." "Jennifer, slow down. What are you talking about?" Her face went pale. "What? When? Is she okay?" Ha'il moved closer, concerned. Lillian's hand was shaking as she held the phone. "I'll be there as soon as I can. 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Ha'il with wide eyes. "My friend Sarah, she's in the hospital. She had an accident. Jennifer says it's bad. I'll drive you." "You don't have to." "Lillian, let me drive you." She grabbed her bag and they left the apartment. In the car, she was silent, her hands twisted together in her lap. Ha'il wanted to reach over and hold her hand, but he didn't know if he was allowed to anymore. The hospital was across town. Traffic was terrible. Lillian kept checking her phone, reading updates from Jennifer, each one making her more anxious. "Sarah and I went to university together," she said suddenly. "She was the first person who was nice to me when I moved to Seoul. When I didn't know anyone and everything felt foreign and hard, she took me to lunch every week. She taught me Korean. She introduced me to you." Hegel remembered. Sarah had worked at the same conservation institute as Lillian. She'd invited him to a gallery opening and brought Lillian along. That was the first time he'd seen her. standing in front of a painting looking like she understood something about it that no one else did. "She'll be okay," he said, even though he had no way of knowing that. "You can't promise that either." No, he couldn't. He couldn't promise anything except that he'd try, and maybe that would have to be enough. They reached the hospital and Lillian practically ran inside. Jennifer met them in the waiting room, her face streaked with tears. "She's in surgery. A car hit her while she was crossing the street. They don't know if she's going to make it." Lillian made a sound like she'd been hit. Jennifer hugged her, and they cried together. Ha-il stood awkwardly to the side, useless. This was her world, her friendship, and he was just an observer. But when Lillian looked over at him, her eyes pleading for something she couldn't name, he moved closer. Put his hand on her back, a small gesture, a quiet one. But she leaned into it. They waited for 3 hours. Doctors came and went. Other families cried or celebrated, or sat in numb silence. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Time moved like honey. Finally, a surgeon came out. "Family of Sarah Choi." They all stood. The surgeon looked tired. "She's stable. The surgery went well. She's going to need a lot of recovery time, but she should be okay." The relief in the room was almost physical. Jennifer started crying again, this time from happiness. Lillian covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. "Can we see her?" Jennifer asked. "She's in recovery. Give it another hour, then you can visit for a few minutes." The surgeon left. Jennifer excused herself to call Sarah's family, and Lillian turned to Ha-il. "Thank you for staying. Where else would I be?" She smiled, just a little. Not the full smile with the dimple, but something. "You need to get back to work. I know you have things to do. Nothing more important than this." Her smile faded. "You say that now. But tomorrow, you'll have a meeting or a crisis or something that needs your attention, and I'll be alone again." "No, you won't." "Ha-il, I'm serious. I'm done putting work first. I'm done disappearing for days and thinking a text message is the same as being present. Things are going to change. People don't just change. Then, I'll be the exception." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. "I want to believe you." "Then believe me. Take a chance. Let me prove it." Before she could answer, her stomach growled, loud enough that they both heard it. Lillian blushed. "When was the last time you ate?" Ha-il asked. "I don't know. Yesterday, maybe." "Lillian, you're pregnant. You can't skip meals." "I haven't had much appetite." He took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "Come on, there's a cafeteria downstairs. We're getting you food." "But Sarah will still be in recovery for another hour. You heard the doctor. You can't see her yet anyway." She let him lead her to the elevator. The cafeteria was mostly empty, just a few tired nurses and one doctor, asleep over a textbook. Ha-il bought her soup, rice, fruit, a sandwich, and juice. "This is too much," she protested. "Eat what you can." They sat at a table by the window. Lillian picked at the soup, then started eating with more enthusiasm. She was hungrier than she'd realized. "So I want to know something, and if you don't want to tell me, you don't have to. But I'm curious," she said between bites. "Why did you marry me?" The question surprised him. "Because I love you." "But why? We're so different. Different backgrounds, different cultures, different everything. Your family hated the idea. It made your life complicated. So why?" Ha-il thought about how to answer. "Do you remember the first time we met? At that gallery?" "Yes. You were standing in front of this painting. Abstract. Lots of colors. Sarah introduced us, and you shook my hand, and immediately went back to looking at the painting. You completely ignored me." Lillian's lips twitched. I was nervous. I didn't know what to say to you. I thought you were the most interesting person I'd ever met. Everyone else at those events, they talk to me because of who I am, what I have, the connections I can give them. But you looked at me for 3 seconds and decided the painting was more worth your time. That's not true. I thought you were handsome. I was just shy. Now, before we find out what Hai-il says next, I need you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Lillian should give him another chance? Should she trust him or protect herself? Let me know what you would do. Now let's continue. You asked me what I saw when I looked at you, Hai-il continued. I see someone who's brave enough to build a life in a country where she doesn't speak the language. Someone who's kind, even when people don't deserve it. Someone who cares more about old buildings than expensive cars. Someone who laughs at terrible jokes and cries during commercials and burns rice every single time she tries to cook it. I don't burn it every time, Lillian muttered. Yes, you do. But I married you because when I'm with you, I feel like a better person than I actually am. You make me want to be better. And I forgot that somewhere along the way. I forgot that love isn't just a feeling you have. It's a choice you make every single day. And I stopped choosing you. I stopped choosing us. Lillian set down her spoon. Her eyes were shining again, but this time not with anger or fear, with something softer. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. I don't know if it can be fixed. We start small, one day at a time, one honest conversation at a time. No more secrets, no more pretending, just truth. Truth is scary, I know, but loneliness is scarier, she nodded slowly. Okay, we can try. I'm not moving back to the apartment, not yet. Maybe not ever. But we can try to figure this out, for the baby, if nothing else. It wasn't everything he wanted, but it was more than he deserved. Thank you. They finished eating in comfortable silence. Then they went back upstairs. Jennifer was waiting with good news. Sarah was awake and asking for visitors. The three of them went in together. Sarah looked terrible, bruised and bandaged and hooked up to machines. But she smiled when she saw them. You look like death, Lillian said, taking her hand. You should see the other guy, Sarah joked, her voice weak. Oh wait, it was a car. The car looks fine. They laughed because the alternative was crying. Sarah's eyes drifted to Hai-il. You're here, that's new. Sarah, Lillian warned. What? I'm on pain medication. I'm allowed to be honest. She looked at Hai-il. You've been a terrible husband. Lillian's miserable. Do better. Sarah. I will, Hai-il said simply. I am. Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. Because she deserves someone who shows up. And if you can't be that person, then get out of the way so someone else can. There's no one else, Lillian said softly. There's only ever been him. The words hung in the air. Hai-il felt something tight in his chest, loosen just a fraction. She still loved him, despite everything, despite all his failures. She still loved him. Now he just had to prove he was worthy of it. They stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended. Jennifer promised to come back in the morning. In the parking lot, Lillian stood by Hai-il's car, uncertain. I can take you back to your apartment, he offered. Actually, could you drop me at a hotel? I don't want to stay in that place anymore. It's depressing. Stay at our apartment. Hai-il. I won't be there. I'll stay somewhere else. But it's your home. You should be comfortable. And all your things are there. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, a hotel is fine. He didn't push. Just drove her to a nice hotel and waited while she checked in. At the elevator, she turned to him. Thank you. For today. For driving me. For staying. For feeding me. It meant something. Can I call you tomorrow? Yes. And the appointment? In 4 days? I'll think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Ha-il took what he could get. He watched her get in the elevator and disappear. Then he sat in his car and called his grandmother. "We need to have a family meeting," he said when she answered. "Tomorrow. Everyone who was at that meeting last week needs to be there." "What's this about?" "It's about making it very clear that Lillian is my wife, and this baby is my child, and anyone who has a problem with that can leave the family. Starting with Uncle Jinwoo." His grandmother was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'll make the calls. And grandmother, I need you to apologize to her. A real apology. Not because I'm asking, but because you were wrong. I know I was. Do you? Because she almost left me forever because she thought you'd take her baby. That's how unwelcome you made her feel. That's how much damage your coldness did." I said I know. Her voice was sharp, but there was shame underneath. "I'll fix it. We'll fix it. All of us. Together. Because this ends now." He hung up and drove home. The apartment felt empty without Lillian in it. He walked through the rooms, seeing them through her eyes. The expensive furniture that she'd never chosen. The art on the walls that she'd never liked. The whole space designed to impress people rather than be a home. No wonder she'd left. In the bedroom, he opened her closet and looked at her clothes. Most were still there. She'd only taken a few things, packed light like she was planning to disappear completely. The thought made him feel sick all over again. He noticed a box on the top shelf that he'd never seen before. He pulled it down and opened it. Inside were sketches, dozens of them, houses mostly. Different styles, different sizes, but all of them warm, inviting. The kind of places where families lived and laughed and grew old together. At the bottom of the box was a sketch labeled Someday. It showed a house with big windows and a garden, a swing set in the yard, 2 figures standing in the doorway holding a small figure between them. A family. Her dream. The future she'd imagined. And he'd been too blind to see it. Ha-il took the sketch and put it in his pocket. Tomorrow, he'd start making changes. Tomorrow, he'd start building the life she deserved. But tonight, he let himself feel the full weight of what he'd almost lost. And he promised himself, promised the empty apartment, promised the baby that didn't know him yet, that he would never take them for granted again. In her hotel room across the city, Lillian lay in bed with her hand on her stomach. The baby was still too small to feel, but she imagined she could sense it anyway. A tiny heartbeat, a tiny life, depending on her to make the right choices. Was giving Ha-il another chance the right choice? Or was she setting herself up for more heartbreak? She didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. And maybe that was enough to start with. The family meeting was set for 10 in the morning at his grandmother's estate. Ha-il arrived early and waited in the study where Lillian had overheard that conversation. The room suddenly felt different to him. He'd been in here 1,000 times, but now he could imagine Lillian standing in the hallway, hearing words that would break her heart. His grandmother entered first. She looked older than he remembered, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Is she coming back?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe. If we can prove we deserve her." "And the baby?" "Due in about 6 months. She's 12 weeks along." His grandmother sat down heavily. "I'm going to be a great grandmother, and the mother of that child is so afraid of me that she ran away. Yes. Don't spare my feelings, Ha-il. I'm not. You want honesty? You've been cruel to her since the day we got engaged. You made it clear she wasn't good enough, wasn't Korean enough, wasn't what you wanted for me. And I let you. I stood there and let you make my wife feel like an outsider in her own family." His grandmother flinched. I thought I was protecting the family legacy. From what? From someone kind and intelligent who loved your grandson. That's what you were protecting us from." Before she could answer, his uncle started arriving. Jinwoo came in looking annoyed at being summoned. 2 other uncles followed, along with 3 family advisors. They all sat around the large table, expecting a normal business meeting. Hae-il remained standing. "I want to be very clear about something. My wife is pregnant. Some of you know this already. Some of you don't. But everyone in this room needs to understand what happens next." Jinwoo waved his hand dismissively. "Congratulations. Can we move on to actual business?" "This is the actual business. Lillian heard you at the last meeting. She heard you talking about bloodlines and purity and arrangements. She thought you were planning to take her baby away from her." The room went quiet. Jinwoo had the decency to look uncomfortable. "She left me," Hae-il continued, his voice steady but cold. "Packed a bag and disappeared because she was so terrified of this family that she'd rather raise her child alone than risk you taking it from her. That's what your words did, Uncle. That's the fear you created." "I never said anything about taking a child," Jinwoo protested. "You talked about foreign influence being damaging, about the child needing proper guidance. What was she supposed to think? That you'd welcome her with open arms? You've never even spoken directly to her at family dinners." One of the advisors cleared his throat. "Mr. Kang, perhaps this is a private family matter that should be discussed separately." "No. Everyone who was in this room that day needs to hear this. My wife is not a problem to be managed. She's not a foreign influence to be contained. She is my family. She and our child are my priority, and if anyone in this room can't accept that, can't treat her with respect and kindness, then you're no longer welcome in my life." Jinwoo stood up. "You can't just cut off your family. Watch me. I've already started distancing myself from family operations. I can go further. I can walk away completely. The only thing keeping me connected to this family is the hope that you can change, that you can be better. But if you can't, I'm done." His grandmother spoke up. "Sit down, Jinwoo." "But, sit. Down." Her voice had steel in it. Jinwoo sat. She turned to Hae-il. "You're right. We've treated Lillian terribly. I've treated her terribly. I was so focused on tradition and legacy that I forgot what actually matters. Family isn't about bloodlines or purity. It's about love and loyalty and showing up for each other. And we failed at that." She looked around the table. "That conversation last week was about protecting Hae-il's child from business rivals, from people who might try to use a baby to hurt this family. But we talked about it like Lillian wasn't the mother, like she was just a vessel we had to work around. That was wrong." "She's not one of us," Jinwoo muttered. "She's more family than you are," Hae-il shot back. "She chose to be here. She chose to build a life in a country that wasn't always kind to her. She chose me, despite knowing my family would make her life difficult. That takes more courage than being born into the right name." His grandmother nodded. "Jinwoo, you have a choice. You can accept Lillian as part of this family, treat her with the respect she deserves, and be a proper uncle to her child. Or you can leave. But you don't get to stay and make her feel unwelcome. This is ridiculous. One foreign woman has you all turned around." "Then leave," Hae-il said simply. "Get out. I don't want you near my wife or my child." Jinwoo looked around the table for support. No one met his eyes. Finally, he stood up and walked out. The door slammed behind him. The remaining family members sat in uncomfortable silence. Then one of the other uncles spoke. "I apologize. I was at that meeting and I should have said something. I should have pointed out how the conversation sounded. I'm sorry." Another uncle nodded. "I'd like to meet Lillian properly. Actually talk to her. Get to know her, if she's willing." One by one, they offered apologies or promises to do better. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything. But it was a start. After the meeting ended and everyone left, Hai-il stayed behind with his grandmother. "I need you to apologize to her directly," he said. "Not through me. To her face. I will, if she'll see me. She's staying at the Plaza Hotel, room 412. Don't ambush her. Call first. Ask if you can visit. And grandmother, be honest. Don't apologize because you have to. Apologize because you mean it." "I do mean it." She touched his hand. "I'm sorry I put you in this position. Sorry I made you choose between your wife and your family. That should never have happened." Hai-il left the estate feeling lighter than he had in days. One problem addressed, 1,000 more to go. He called Lillian. She answered on the third ring. "Hi?" "Hi, how are you feeling?" "Tired. A little sick. The morning sickness is getting worse." "Have you eaten?" "Not yet. I can't seem to keep anything down. Ginger tea helps, and crackers before you get out of bed." There was a pause. "How do you know that?" "I've been reading about pregnancy, what to expect, how to help, what symptoms are normal. I have a whole list of things I didn't know I needed to know." Her voice softened. "You've been reading about pregnancy?" "I have a lot of catching up to do. I want to be prepared." "Hai-il, that's actually really sweet." They talked for a few more minutes about nothing important. What she'd had for dinner, a show she was watching, the view from her hotel window. Normal conversation. Easy conversation. The kind they used to have before silence became their default. "The appointment is tomorrow," she said finally. 2 in the afternoon. "I remember. You can come, if you still want to." Relief flooded through him. "I want to. I'll pick you up at 1:30. "Okay. And Hai-il, thank you for not giving up on me. Never. I'll never give up on us." After they hung up, he went to a bookstore and bought every pregnancy book they had. Then he stopped at a market and bought ginger root, crackers, and things the internet said helped with morning sickness. He had it all delivered to her hotel. That night, she sent him a photo. All the supplies arranged on her hotel bed with a note that said, "You're ridiculous." But she was smiling in the picture. He could tell from the way she'd angled it. The next day, he arrived at her hotel at exactly 1:30. Lillian came down wearing a blue dress he'd never seen before. She looked beautiful and nervous. In the car, she twisted her hands together. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "That something will be wrong, that the baby won't be okay, that this is all going to fall apart." He reached over and took her hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together. Okay?" She nodded and didn't let go of his hand for the entire drive. The clinic was small and comfortable. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She shook both their hands. "Mr. and Mrs. Kang, good to see you both. Mrs. Kang, I'm glad you brought your husband this time." Lillian blushed. "He's been busy." "Well, he's here now. That's what matters. Let's take a look at this baby." The ultrasound room was dim. Lillian lay on the exam table, and Hai-il stood next to her, still holding her hand. The doctor spread gel on Lillian's stomach and pressed the ultrasound wand against her skin. For a moment, there was just static on the screen. Then a shape appeared, small and blurry, but definitely there. "There's your baby," the doctor said, pointing. "Everything looks good. Measuring right on track for 12 weeks. Hai-il stared at the screen. That tiny blob was his child, his and Lillian's. A whole person, growing and developing, completely dependent on them to protect it and love it. "And here's the heartbeat," the doctor continued. A sound filled the room, fast and strong, like a drum. The baby's heart beating. Lillian started crying. Hai-il felt his own eyes burning. He squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back. Everything looks perfect, the doctor said. Baby is healthy. Mom is healthy. Keep taking your prenatal vitamins, get rest, and I'll see you in 4 weeks. She printed out pictures and handed them to Lillian. Your first family photo. In the parking lot, they sat in the car looking at the ultrasound images. The baby was just a shape, barely recognizable, but it was theirs. I can't believe that's real, Lillian whispered. That's our baby. I know. Are you scared? Terrified, but in a good way. She laughed. I didn't know there was a good way to be terrified. There is, when it's about something that matters this much. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Lillian spoke. Your grandmother called me this morning. Hail tensed. What did she say? She apologized, really apologized. She explained what the meeting was actually about. The security concerns, the protocols. She said she handled it badly and she's sorry. She wants to meet for lunch next week to talk properly. Are you going to go? I think so. She sounded genuine. And she's going to be this baby's great-grandmother. I want them to have a relationship if possible. What about us? Do you think we can have a relationship? A real one this time? Lillian looked at the ultrasound picture. I want to try. But High Heel, I need things to actually change. I need you to be present, to talk to me, to let me into your life instead of keeping me on the outside. I will. I am. I had a family meeting yesterday. Told them all that you and the baby are my priority. That anyone who can't respect you isn't welcome in our lives. My Uncle Jinwoo left. He couldn't handle it. Her eyes widened. You kicked your uncle out of the family. He kicked himself out by being a terrible person. But yes. Hail, that's huge. Your family is everything to you. No, you're everything to me. I just forgot that for a while. Okay, quick pause. If this story is giving you all the feelings, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because I post stories like this every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribed? Good. Now let's see how this ends. Over the next few weeks, things slowly changed. Hayil didn't move back into their apartment. Instead, they met for lunch twice a week, had dinner together 3 times, went to pregnancy appointments, took walks, talked, really talked, about everything they'd avoided for 3 years. He told her about the parts of his family business that scared him, the violence he'd witnessed as a child, the pressure to be perfect, the fear that he'd turn into his father, cold and distant and cruel. She told him about feeling like she'd never belong anywhere, not in Zimbabwe anymore, but not fully in Korea either, about missing her mother every single day, about the guilt of being happy when her father had died, angry at her for leaving. They cried together, laughed together, started learning how to be partners instead of strangers sharing a home. Lillian met with his grandmother for lunch. It went better than expected. The older woman actually listened, actually apologized, actually tried. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. She also started working again, a small restoration project for a cultural center in Jongno district. The building was old and beautiful, and bringing it back to life made her happy in a way Hai-il hadn't seen in years. He visited the site one afternoon and watched her work. She was in her element, directing workers, examining old wood, sketching solutions to structural problems. She was brilliant. How had he never noticed how brilliant she was? You're staring, she said, without looking up from her sketch. Can't help it. You're impressive. I'm covered in dust, and I haven't washed my hair in 2 days. I'm the opposite of impressive. Disagree. You're creating something beautiful from something broken. That's the most impressive thing in the world. She looked up at him then and smiled. The real smile. The one with the dimple. His heart stuttered. You want to see something? She asked. Always. She led him to the back of the building where she'd been working on restoring a traditional wooden door. The craftsmanship was incredible, the detail in the carvings perfect. "This door is 200 years old," she explained. "It was damaged in a fire 50 years ago, and everyone thought it was beyond saving. But look," she ran her hand over the wood. "If you know where to look, you can see the burn marks, the cracks, the places where it almost broke completely. But it's still here, still standing, still beautiful. Maybe even more beautiful because of what it survived." "Is this a metaphor?" he asked. "Maybe. Or maybe I just really like old doors." But she was smiling. That night, they had dinner at a small restaurant near the cultural center. Nothing fancy. Just soup and frequent conversation. "I've been thinking," Lillian said, "about where we live. I don't want to go back to that apartment. It doesn't feel like home." "Okay, we can find somewhere new, wherever you want." "Actually, I was thinking maybe we could build something. Design it ourselves. Make it exactly what we want." Hail thought about the sketches he'd found in her closet, the dream house she'd drawn. "I'd like that." "Really? You wouldn't rather just buy something already made?" "I'd rather build a life with you. If that includes building a house, even better." She pulled out her notebook, the same one from the sketches. "I have some ideas. Nothing final. Just things I've been thinking about." She showed him pages of drawings. A house with big windows and a garden, space for a studio, a nursery painted yellow, a kitchen large enough for family dinners, every detail chosen with care. "This is incredible," he said. "When did you design all this?" "Over the past 3 years. Whenever I couldn't sleep, whenever I felt lonely, I'd draw the home I wished we had. Let's build it. All of it. Hill, this is expensive, and it would take time. I have money, and we have time, our whole lives." Lillian bit her lip. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because I can't do this halfway. I can't start building a life with you and then have you disappear again. It would break me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm all in. Whatever it takes." She studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, let's build a house." The months that followed were the happiest Hail could remember. They found land outside Seoul, with views of the mountains. They hired architects and contractors. They spent hours going over plans, choosing materials, arguing about paint colors. Lillian's stomach grew. The baby started moving. The first time she felt it kick, she called him immediately. He rushed over and put his hand on her belly, waiting. When he felt the tiny flutter against his palm, he laughed out loud. "That's our kid," she said, "already causing trouble. Gets it from you. Excuse me, I'm delightful. You are. But you're also stubborn, and you argue about everything. Only when you're wrong, which is often." He kissed her. Just a quick press of lips. Nothing dramatic. But it felt like coming home. They still weren't living together. Lillian had moved out of the hotel and into a small apartment near the cultural center. Hail visited almost every day. They were taking it slow, rebuilding trust one moment at a time. But some nights, she'd call him late and ask him to stay. He'd sleep on the couch while she took the bed. And in the morning, they'd have breakfast together like a normal couple. Those were his favorite mornings. The cultural center restoration was completed in her 6th month of pregnancy. There was a small ceremony to celebrate the reopening. Lillian gave a speech about preservation and history and honoring what came before while building toward the future. Hail stood in the back and watched her shine. After the ceremony, she found him. "Thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it. You did something amazing here. We did something amazing. You funded half of this project. You brought it to life. That was all you." She took his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She led him through the building to a small room in the back. It was empty except for a single bench by the window. "I used to come here during lunch breaks," she explained, "when everything felt hard and I wasn't sure I could keep going. I'd sit here and think about the future, about what I wanted my life to look like." "And what did you want?" "This. You. A family. A home that felt safe. Work that mattered. I wanted to stop feeling like I was just surviving and start feeling like I was actually living." "Are you there yet?" "Living?" She turned to face him. "I'm getting there. With you, I think I can get there. Lillian, I love you. I've loved you since the day you ignored me at that gallery, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of you. You don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do. You gave me another chance when I didn't deserve it. You let me back into your life, into our baby's life. That's a gift, and I'm not going to waste it." She kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. "Move in with me," she said. "Not to the old apartment, to my place. It's small and kind of a mess, but it's where I've been building my new life, and I want you to be part of it. Are you sure?" "I'm sure. No more taking it slow. No more keeping distance just in case. I want to be with you. Really with you. All in." "All in," he agreed. He moved in the next week. It was cramped with both of them there, but they made it work. Fell asleep talking about the house they were building. Woke up to the baby kicking. Learned how to share space and compromise and be a team. At 7 months pregnant, Lillian went into false labor. Hai-il rushed her to the hospital, terrified something was wrong, but it was just her body practicing. The baby wasn't ready yet. Sitting in the hospital waiting for test results, Lillian squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you're here. Where else would I be? 3 months ago, you probably would have been at a meeting or handling some business crisis. But you're here. Meetings can wait. Business can wait. You and our baby come first. Always." The test results came back fine. They went home, and Hai-il made her tea and put her feet up and read to her from a book of baby names. "What about Hana?" he suggested. "It means one or first, our first child. I like it. Hana Kang. It sounds strong. What if it's a boy? Then we'll figure it out. But I think it's a girl. I can feel it." She was right. 2 months later, Lillian gave birth to a healthy baby girl. 7 pounds, full head of dark hair, lungs that could wake the entire hospital floor. Hai-il held his daughter for the first time and cried. This tiny person, so perfect and small, depending on him completely. It was terrifying and wonderful and the best moment of his life. "Hi, Hana," he whispered. "I'm your dad. I'm going to mess up sometimes, but I'm always going to love you. And your mom. We're going to be okay." Lillian watched them with tears streaming down her face. "We're a family." "We're a family," he agreed. The first few weeks were chaos. Sleepless nights and endless diapers, and learning how to do everything while exhausted. But they did it together. Hai-il took time off work. His family came to visit, and for the first time, they were genuinely kind to Lillian. His grandmother held Hana and cried and apologized again for being so cold. "She looks like you," she told Lillian. "She's going to be beautiful." "She looks like both of us," Lillian corrected gently. "The best of both." 2 months after Hana was born, their house was finished. They moved in on a sunny Saturday in April. The place was everything Lillian had drawn and more, light and warm and full of space for a family to grow. The nursery was painted yellow, with windows overlooking the garden. Hai-il's study had built-in shelves for books and a desk by the window. The kitchen was huge, perfect for the family dinners they were planning. And the master bedroom had big windows that let in the sunrise. "It's perfect," Lillian said, walking through the empty rooms. It's exactly what I imagined. It's home, Haya-il said. Our home. Finally. They spent that first night on a mattress on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. Hana slept in a bassinet between them, and it was perfect. Time passed. Hana grew. She started smiling, then laughing, then trying to crawl. Lillian went back to work part-time, taking on projects she loved. Haya-il continued pulling away from the shadowy parts of his family business, focusing on legitimate companies and spending time with his family. Every year on their wedding anniversary, they went back to the hotel where Lillian had disappeared. Not to remember the pain, but to celebrate how far they'd come. To remind themselves that love required more than just feeling. It required showing up, being honest, choosing each other every single day. On their 5th anniversary, they sat at the same table where Haya-il had waited for her all those years ago. Do you ever regret it? Lillian asked. Giving up parts of your life to make this work? I didn't give up anything that mattered. I gained everything. You, Hana, a real home. That's not a sacrifice. That's the best deal I ever made. Even when I'm impossible to deal with. Especially then. You keep me honest. You keep me good. You were always good. You just forgot for a while. He took her hand across the table. I'll never forget again. I promise. I'm going to hold you to that. Please do. They ordered champagne to celebrate, talked about Hana's first words, about the new project Lillian was designing, about the vacation they were planning, about normal, everyday things that made up a life. At the end of the evening, Haya-il pulled out a small box. What's this? Lillian asked. Open it. Inside was a necklace, simple and delicate, with a small pendant shaped like a house. It's our house, he explained. I had it made from your original sketch, so you can carry it with you. A reminder that you built something beautiful, that we built something beautiful. Together. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. I love it. I love you. I love you too. Always have. Always will. He fastened the necklace around her neck and kissed her softly. Around them, the hotel staff smiled. Some couples ended in this place, but some couples began here. And some, like Haya-il and Lillian, learned here that love was not a destination. It was a journey. One that required courage and honesty and the willingness to keep choosing each other, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. They left the hotel hand in hand, walking out into the Seoul night. Their daughter was at home with Haya-il's grandmother, probably being spoiled with sweets and stories. Tomorrow they'd pick her up and go back to their normal life. The beautiful, ordinary life they'd built from broken pieces. As they drove home, Lillian looked out the window at the city lights. You know what I realized, she said. What? I spent so long feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. Not in Zimbabwe, not in Korea. Like I was always going to be an outsider. But I belong with you, with Hana, in the home we built. That's enough. That's everything. Haya-il squeezed her hand. You've always belonged. Right here. With me. I know that now. And she did. Finally. Completely. She knew. The pregnancy test that had started everything sat in a box somewhere in their new house. Lillian had kept it, a reminder of the day her life had changed, the day she'd been scared enough to run. But she wasn't running anymore. She was home. And home wasn't a place or a country or a building, though the house they'd built was wonderful. Home was the man sitting next to her. The daughter waiting for them. The life they'd chosen to create together. It hadn't been easy. There had been tears and fear, and moments where everything almost fell apart. But they'd fought for each other. They'd chosen honesty over silence. They'd learned that love was not just a feeling you had, but a choice you made every single day. And every day, they chose each other. That was the real happy ending. Not perfection. Not a life without problems. But two people committed to facing those problems together. Two people who'd learned from their mistakes. Two people building a future, one honest conversation at a time. As they pulled into their driveway, the house lit up in welcome. Hail turned to Lillian. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up. For giving me another chance. For building this life with me. Thank you for being worth the chance." They got out of the car and walked into their home, together, the way it was always meant to be. And somewhere in the universe, in the space where broken things become beautiful, their story settled into its proper place, not as a fairy tale, not as a perfect romance, but as something real and messy and true. A love story that almost ended before it began, a marriage saved by honesty, a family built on second chances. Their story. Forever. Okay, we've reached the end, and I need to know what you thought. Did this story hit you right in the feels? Drop a comment and let me know your favorite part. Was it when Hail finally stood up to his family, when he showed up at the hospital, when he held Hana for the first time? Tell me everything. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button so you never miss a story. Trust me, the next one is going to be even better. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And remember, love is not just something you feel, it's something you do. Every single day. See you in the next story.